Hey guys, how's it going? Happy Tuesday. So, like usual for Tuesdays, I am doing a live. I'm just gonna keep talking until the circle stops spinning on the left. Okay, so I've been live 5 seconds. Great. Once again, if you can't hear me, it is a little windy up here. Drop a comment, let me know. I can always do this later inside, redo it, do a written post about it. Anyways, so once again, yeah, I'm at WeWork. I'm at my new shared co-working space, which I'm super excited about because I get to work around people as a social butterfly that was killing me. Anyways, I want to talk today about helping you have more content ideas. That is the thing I hear about the most. People don't know what to write about. They kind of get locked up on what they should be doing. Um, so I want to start with an example. A good exercise for you to do is just to stop and sit down and think of the favorite stories that you like to tell. So I'm going to tell you a quick story from my life. There's a bus going by. I'm right on the main street in Haifa, which is pretty cool. Um, so back in 2008, I got married, and when I got married, my grandmother caught on fire. 100% true story. I'm not making this up. So in 2008, my grandmother and I had some friction about the wedding preparations, the length of the engagement, things of that nature. And so we had some difficulties relationally during the engagement period. She didn't think the wedding would come together, all of these things. So she got to the wedding and she realized that there were tablecloths, there was food, there was wine. And she was standing in the food line with my father, and very dramatically, because she was a very dramatic person, she's like, "I eat my words." No context. My father was just like, "I don't know what you're talking about." "I eat my words." It came together, and my father pointed her toward the bridal table where I was sitting. He's like, "You got someone else to talk to about that, not me." So my grandmother, uh, straightens her blazer a little bit, comes rushing over. Of course, four people are trying to talk to me because it's my wedding day. And my grandmother comes up to me. She starts going on and on about apologizing. She eats her words. Well, here's the problem. At the head of my bridal table was a great big candle, beautiful arrangement in a huge glass votive. What my grandmother did, just very neatly without realizing it, while leaning over to get my attention, her breast actually ended up exactly in the middle of the votive. So she's trying to get my attention, and then I noticed that her blazer starts to smoke, and then my grandmother's breast catches on fire. And so there's a split second decision where it's like I can throw my champagne on her, but I'm pretty sure that's alcoholic and be a bad thing, or I can burn my hand. So I have to reach out and grope my grandmother to put out the fire. It was quite a moment. It went super fast, and then once it was over, like I sat back, my ex husband sat back, and like my grandmother took a moment to collect herself and very primly pulled her jacket around her and kind of shrugged her shoulders. And she's like, "It's not obvious, is it?" She had a polyester jacket, basically plastic fabric, and it had a softball sized hole in the breast. And we're like, "You can tell." And the funny addendum to that story is she held on to that jacket, insisting that her seamstress could fix a melted hole in the fabric. And when she passed away, my aunt actually found that in the closet, and my father begged her for the jacket because it became such a family story. All right, so I'm a copywriter for bookkeepers, and I'm talking to you about my grandmother catching on fire at my wedding 12 years ago. What does that have to do with content, with business marketing, with writing for bookkeepers? Uh, Depending on how you look at it, nothing. Same with your personal stories. I open this video by saying coming up with content ideas from your personal stories, and a lot of them you may balk at that because you're like, well, my personal life has nothing to do with my business life. Surely I need to have more business stuff on my feed. But there are three different kinds of stories that actually really help you get really good authentic content, and you're able to repurpose for your business. And I put a post up yesterday that I'm going to use as an example. I'm going to use the story as an example. So I'll go ahead and get started in the different types of stories. Now, I've got three different categories you can break it into. past stories. So 12 years ago is in the past, it's done. Ongoing stories, so stuff that is going on in your life that is still developing. Being a parent is a big one there. For me, it's my international move, but that's of course not usual. And then in the moment stories. So, for example, during the worst of the quarantine, I trimmed my own bangs for the first time, and I share pictures of it with you. Nothing to do with bookkeeping or writing, but it led to immediate personal engagement. So, three different types. You got past stories, ongoing stories, and immediate stories in the moment. So, the first thing I want you to do is just sit down and think about your favorite stories. I want you to think about, I don't want you to worry about how does it relate to my business. We'll get to that later. We'll go through the transformation. Right now, I want you to get into these stories from your life that you really love, because I want you to get these stories that have this emotion, this authenticity. They can be transformed, and that's fine. But you have to start with something that's authentically yours, So you can jot this down in like your notes app on your phone. You can write it out in a piece of scratch paper, just something to brainstorm. So I want you to think about your favorite stories. So for example, the one about my grandmother, one of my favorite stories. That was the best networking tool I had when I was still networking in person. But think of your favorite stories. Think of favorite memories from when you were a kid, pivotal moments from growing up, influential people from your childhood or young adulthood that had this effect on you. What difficult things have you overcome? A move, a divorce, an addiction. What's something unusual that people may not know about you? For example, I used to have a motorcycle before I moved here and rode it a lot. I have 2 tattoos that no one can see. I have a thyroid issue that I've had since I was 12. So it's something unusual that people may not know about you. And also, everyone usually has 1 or 2 party stories. You go to a party, you're meeting a bunch of new people, or you're at a networking event. What's your favorite icebreaker story? Like I said, my grandmother catching on fire is a really good one. So think about, just write a quick list. Just jot down notes like, what are some favorite stories in your life that are meaningful to you, that have emotion to you, that are connected to who you are? Don't worry about, well, this can't be related to my business. There's nothing to do with, what I do for clients. Don't worry about it. Just write down stories that are meaningful to you from your life and that you feel like are really deeply connected to you, because that is where the good stuff in your content will come from, that personal connection. So for example, I told you there are 3 different types of stories, and I gave you examples. So there's past stories like my grandmother catching on fire. Another one I have is when I was in high school, I almost quit the softball team, even though anyone who knows me now know that I did very well. I was team captain for 2 years and was a very good catcher. I almost quit the softball team, except I had this pivotal moment where the catcher ahead of me, the first seed catcher, I can't remember the term, she almost, she had a really bad collision at home plate and was put out of commission during the tournament game. And then I was a freshman and I had to come in and finish the game. We ended up winning. So I can go into more depth in that story. I won't now, but I'm using that as an example of that is the story from my past. And as I tell it, I can show you something about who I am, who my values are, what I do, how I work. So this is a really good way for you to get that authenticity of your old stories, and then you can find a way to tie them into your business. But those past stories and like your ongoing struggles, when you share that stuff, you're telling people who you are. You're showing them what your values are. And once again, that lets them know if you're the kind of person they want to work with. If you illustrate your values in that way, they can't know if they align with you unless you tell them who you are. You show them what you've overcome. That shows your character, your strengths. And honestly, it shows your humanity and connects with theirs. Okay, so any bookkeepers who are watching this, any accountants, any dry business owners, you're probably thinking right now, this does not apply to me. I have a technical financial career. I have no business putting personal stuff on my feed. It's actually the opposite. this absolutely applies to you and is so good for you. If anything, you have the most to gain, because think about it. While other accountants are doing dry content, you get to let them know you as a person. You get to let them know your personality, what your character is like. Instead of just talking about tax filing deadlines, you let them know who you're working with so that they'll want to work with you. And because you're in a dry profession, most other bookkeepers and accountants aren't doing that. So you stand out. For example, there are two bookkeepers that I love following their content. And one, she talks about how she fertilizes her garden with her own goat's poop, and I think that's hilarious. I love that she has that side to her. It makes me feel more human to her. She's less robotic. And another one, she has gauge earrings the size of dinner plates, which I love because she's just authentically herself. And she talks about, minimalism in her posts. She tells me who she is. I love it. Their feeds stand out to me as a result of that. Their personality comes through because they're sharing their personal stories. So anyways, hopefully you do sit down and do this exercise where you write down personal stories that are meaningful to you, pivotal moments, things that really made you who you are, things that really make you laugh or that you tell to other people a lot, your favorite icebreaker stories. So once again, going through that exercise, don't influence it by thinking about your business. But right now, I want you to look at that list. And now I want you to think about how you can connect some of those to your business, or a little more abstractly, your personal business values. So this is where you can shift these personal stories into a version that you can use for your business. So you don't lose that authenticity, but you get to leverage the value and the good story in a way to help your customers connect with you. So for example, it's just like, say something funny happened over the weekend. You're going to tell that story differently to your coworker than you would to your best friend. And that's okay. So this is what we're doing. You have a version of the story you're used to telling, but now you have to tell a different version of it for a different audience, for potential clients. So yesterday I put up a post about how I now work in a co-working space. That has nothing to do with writing content, with content for bookkeepers. Why would anyone care about me working at a different address? How does that impact you? You have to find a way to tell it in a different way. So I have multiple storylines going along with this. So I told you there's past stories, ongoing stories, and in the moment short-term stories. There is an ongoing story I've been sharing with you guys that you've been on a journey with me in my international move. I tell you when I have language issues, when I eat a delicious at a delicious restaurant, eating hummus with the dough. You've been on this journey with me, and going to this co-working space is part of that journey. So I'm not just telling you, hey, I now work in a different address. I find a way to tell the story in a way that matters. This has been an important step for me to reach that level in my business, to have that level of growth and involvement in the culture. It's a different way of telling the business. Other friends I have here, I just tell them, yeah, I work at the co-working space now. It's great. So you don't care that I'm at a different address, but you've been a part of my moving story. So I share that part of my moving story with you, and I share it in a way where I've overcome something. So that tells you something about me. I've overcome to this point where I now have enough income just from writing online and building it from scratch, even without a job permit, and I am here. And that shows you who I am. So you can do that in your stories. Think about your overcoming stories, the things you've achieved. I overlook and downplay myself all the time. This exercise I actually did yesterday, and it was great. So, and then in that post and talking about coming here, I literally wrote at the top of my brainstorming page, no one is going to care that I moved. Why would bookkeepers care that I moved? Why would my ideal client give a flying fart about me being here? Part of it is the journey, but part of it also is I found a way to tie it into my business. And I realized the reason I have this level of income is because I've been writing the content that I do for clients, and it has a real effect in my life. Here is that effect, here is that achievement. So that's how I was able to tie it to my business. 100% of my work, my clients, my growth comes from Facebook content. So I can show that to you. I have this achievement. I'm at this new address because of that. And you can have this effect too. This is what I help other businesses do as well, like yours. So that's what I mean. But the post retained the authenticity of my feeling of finally being out of the house and being more immersed in Israeli culture. The post retained that feeling. It got tons of engagement. I got so many comments. And it's probably one of the most engaging posts that I put up. And also later that day, I got directly from that post, I got 2 different messages, and one of them was for specifically for more work. Who cares that I moved addresses? How does that, lead to a business connection or a work suggestion? Once again, your content, and I've mentioned this before, it's just like there are different types of content. At other times, I'm going to sell myself more directly, but at other times, I'm going to post stories. I'm going to tell you about who I am so you can get to know me and who I am, what my values are, what I do, how I help my business, and how I help your business. You can do that in yours. So I was able to retain the authenticity and the emotion of me getting to this point, but in a way that my audience actually cared. So once again, there are 3 different types of stories you can tell. You can tell like past stories from your past, and that's more about like your values and who you are. You can tell ongoing stories, have them share the journey with you. Like I said, parenting is a great one for that. I love following parents on on social media. And then I also, in the moment stuff, like during the worst of the quarantine, I never cut my bangs before. I knew everyone else was going through a hair crisis. So it's just like, all right, I can connect with people through that. And it started some really funny conversations. The idea that's the thing. That's what content's supposed to do. It's supposed to help with relationships and conversations. It feels very one-sided, but it's got to start with you. You got to start from there. So these are like all about engagement posts. And once again, my grandmother catching on fire, nothing to do with writing, nothing to do with content. I actually don't even have a strong connection to what it does for my business. But you get a better idea of who I am and my storytelling abilities. So I guess maybe it's tangentially related. But I want you to take away these 3 things. Number 1, tell different types of stories for different purposes. I can't give you a silver bullet, perfect, one-time use piece of content. It's all about posting a lot. Be consistent. If the frequency of posting stresses you out, just be consistent. If you have to start at 3 days a week, start at 3 days a week. That's fine. And you have to do different types of posts. I'm just talking about this one kind of post, this one kind of idea that can give you lots of great information to really give yourself emotion and authenticity, even if your business feels dry and boring and it feels irrelevant. So 1, there's no one size fits all for these stories, but think about those 3 things. Think about stories in your past that are meaningful. Think about your ongoing journeys. Think about what's going on in the moment today, something that's human, something that other people can relate to. A second thing I would encourage you to do is connect your story to your business and values if you can. That's easier for stuff, I think, in the past because you're showing who you are. But for example, like me trimming my bangs, nothing to do with bookkeeping, but it was a way to connect with people, to have a conversation, to have engagement. That's fine. And then also keep in mind who you're talking to. Make your story about your audience. Even when I, post these stories, I had the people I'm talking to in mind all the time. It's just like, okay, other people are feeling insecure about their bangs. I'm going to show them my insecurity about it and ask them how they're handling it. Ask them if they're cutting their hair themselves, things of that nature. It's a way to have connection even though you're telling your story, you're encouraging reciprocity. You want your story to encourage dialogue, to encourage replies. You want to somehow make your stories about them. And that's what I mean. You're going to start with these really authentic stories that are very deeply emotional and valuable to you. And you're going to find a way to tell it to this audience. Again, you don't tell the same story in the same way to every person you meet. So think about it that way. But this is a really good way to come up with a bunch of really good, authentic ideas for engagement and personal posts and things of that nature. And once again, bookkeepers are not excluded. Dry businesses are not excluded. If anything, you have more to gain by being personal and open and goofy and interesting. Like I said, one of my favorite bookkeepers to watch. She has giant gauges in her ear, and I freaking love it. And when she talks, I know that she knows what she's talking about. All right, I have talked to you long enough. Hopefully, you heard me well enough over the traffic, the wind, and I think the air conditioner unit over here on the roof. I don't know, I'm still getting used to it here. I think that I was hoping that was a boat horn just so you could hear it. Anyways, that's what I've got. If you have any questions, just let me know. Otherwise, just do this exercise. This is a great place to come up with very engaging, authentic content that isn't dry and lets your clients get to know who you really are. Anyways, have a beautiful day. I hope the weather is as gorgeous there as it is here. It's sunny and probably, I don't know, it's above 70 degrees. It's lovely. Anyways, have a wonderful day. I will catch up with you guys next week. And also, I am working actually on a Facebook group specifically for bookkeepers to help them with writing content. So that was a lot of what I worked on this morning. I'm excited to start rolling that out more in the next week or two. Anyways, have a good day. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.